Welcome back to the Echoes podcast. I'm Jessica Smetana. He's Mike Golic Jr. joining us fresh from his flight home from Super Bowl 60, where we all got to see some incredible performances by former Notre Dame football players. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Olympics. We're going to talk about some new coaches confirmed on the football team. But before we get to that, please like and subscribe to the show. If you're a fan, tell your friends about it. We love our comments that we get on the YouTube page and on social media. But you have to subscribe. So wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, please subscribe and follow at the Echoes ND Pod. Mike, do you want to start with Rylie Mills or Julian Love?
Woo!
Which moment was bigger in the Super Bowl Sunday for Notre Dame football?
Man, I tell you what, the Rylie Mills one to me was like not the most enjoyable because obviously you and I have gotten to both know Julian Love pretty well over the years. Great ambassador for Notre Dame in the NFL and been a really good player for a long time, going back to his Giants days and how important he's been in the Seahawks defense. But Rylie Mills just caught me off guard, like going back and looking at the snap count. Obviously, he had spent most of the season on the shelf after his injury in the CFP last year, and then was getting, like single-digit snaps from like week 15 on. And when I saw him just forklift buddy into Drake May, I was like, oh, if they're getting Rylie Mills production in this game at this point in his rookie season, his first sack coming in the freaking Super Bowl, I knew it was a wrap from that point. So that one had me the most jacked up. We don't know Rylie like super well, but just to see, your first sack came in a Super Bowl win against the Patriots was pretty sick for him. Obviously, the Love interception at the end was the icing on the cake and kind of capped everything off, and we're super happy. But the Rylie Mills one just caught me off guard.
No, totally. His first career sack, like you said, he had not played a lot this year. And the thing that is interesting about both of these players, Julian Love, who, we talked about, we know a little bit better, sort of closer to our age, and Rylie, who's a younger player, is that both of them missed time when Notre Dame had, playoff games because of injury. Julian Love didn't get to play a lot in the Cotton Bowl in 2018 on that Notre Dame team. Rylie Mills got hurt, which was terrible. Notre Dame needed him. It was terrible.
in the worst way. But like both of those guys, Jess, like at least with Rylie, like we saw, this Notre Dame D-line depth got some love. But when Julian was hurt in that Cotton Bowl, that sort of highlighted that era where Julian was one of the best defensive backs to come out of Notre Dame in the 21st century, but we had no depth behind him. When he went out, it was over in that game.
Yeah,
and fast forward to now and how different that is. It's just kind of an interesting sign of the times.
It really is. He was so great, though. I spent my night watching Julian Love college football highlights, and God, there's so many pass breakups and interceptions and just tackles. He was such an incredible player to watch. But would Notre Dame have won the 2018 Cotton Bowl even if he was fully healthy? I mean, that was an incredible Clemson team, so we don't have to sit here and act like things would have changed. But it was a bummer that Notre Dame's, probably their best player that season, didn't get to play very much in that game because he had an injury. And then Rylie Mills, of course, goes out in the first playoff game last year on the playoff run, doesn't get to play in the national championship game or the Sugar Bowl or the Orange Bowl. And now they're both on the same team on this Seahawks playoff run, part of this elite Seahawks defense, and each get a moment to shine in the Super Bowl. And of course, Mike Tirico on the call always shouts out Notre Dame players. So Rylie Mills got a, rookie out of Notre Dame shout out, which was really nice to hear. But yeah, I'm with you. It was two very awesome moments. The Julian Love interception will go down in history because of Chris Collinsworth's call of the interception, which was, I don't know what to say about that.
He said, I got nothing for you, Mike.
But it was still awesome for Julian Love, who's like, the Giants just like let him walk in free agency. He was like a glue guy on the Giants. He was awesome. And they were like, whatever. I guess we don't want to pay you. Good luck. And so really happy that he ended up on the Seahawks and now gets to be a Super Bowl champion.
I saw the picture of him on the bus with the Lombardi. And Julian, I feel like has such a special place in Notre Dame fans' heart. Maybe I'm just projecting, but he's the guy I feel like I've seen wear his Notre Dame letter jacket on the way into the stadium in NFL games more than pretty much any other alum. Just an all-around great dude. So super fired up for both of them. And like you said, Julian's been kind of a leader on that team and on that defense that's, certainly got guys that might qualify as better players, but been incredibly productive and important there. And then for Rylie to earn snaps down the stretch of the season, coming off a year where he was largely injured, arrow got to be all the way up. He fits in so perfectly there. I remember texting our buddy Mina Kimes when he got drafted, and I was like, you guys are going to love what you get out of him as a guy that is, I saw him, after the game, they asked him about that sack. And he basically said, he's like, yeah, I just told myself going into this game, stop thinking and just run through somebody. And sure as shit, it worked. So
I saw a bunch of people were reposting his "I Hate QBs" shirt that he wore a few years ago. It was an insane rep. He took that guard and just pushed him all the way backwards into Drake May and then sacked him with one hand, basically. It was awesome, Mike.
The darkest feeling as an offensive lineman is being used as the instrument to sack your own quarterback.
Yeah, you must have also felt like some pain watching that. You don't want to be the instrument used to sack your own quarterback, certainly. Did you have any takeaways from the Super Bowl? Any like big picture takeaways? Because I had one, which was special teams. Like they say defense wins championships, but special teams in this game was huge. And if there had been a kicker punter MVP, game MVP at the end of this game between the Seahawks punter and their kicker who made 6 field goals in the game, and their punter who had an insane game, I would not have been mad. I know, congrats to Kenneth Walker. He certainly earned it. He's an incredible player himself. But if they had done co-MVPs for the special team stars in that game, I would have understood it.
My favorite part of that game was checking the live odds for MVP and seeing that they had to just force enter Jason Meyer's name in there. He was at one point the 4th highest odds to win MVP, and you couldn't click his name. He didn't have the icon next to him. It was like someone had to manually enter his name in, because I think he set a Super Bowl record for field goals made in a game. And between him and Dixon, it was an exemplary performance, which I have to imagine, and Jess, you know this, special teams coordinators weird. We're Notre Dame fans. Notre Dame fans, I feel like, because of the outsized role special teams has played in Notre Dame's success over the Marcus Freeman tenure, have a deep appreciation for that side of football. And special teams coaches, they don't get as much time in the meetings. They're a little quirkier. They're in a dark room just trying to draw up fakes and sell them to the head coach. And now every special teams coach in the league is going to be able to cut on the tape and be like, this is what happens if you give a shit about this. If we draft guys to punt, if we focus on what we do in the return game and go and acquire guys like Rashid Shaheed at the deadline. Special teams coordinators had to be so bricked up out there watching this game, knowing they can weaponize this in the first team meeting of OTAs.
Oh, 100%. And I did have one other takeaway, which was when Mike McDonald was receiving the Lombardi Trophy. He's 38 years old, former defensive coordinator, former college defensive coordinator. I was like, Marcus Freeman, look away. Don't look at this. This is not you. Don't get any ideas, buddy.
No, you're gonna be perfectly happy with the much sharper shaped gold college football playoff trophy. You want all those sharp edges down there, the Lombardi at the bottom. You could get hurt with that. The CFP trophy, much more gentle. You'll never cut yourself on that. Don't mind the man behind the curtain.
Equally
Please
as
don't do that.
Phallic, though. Okay. Any other thoughts on the Super Bowl before we move on?
No, I mean, kind of what everyone expected here. The Patriots had kind of been, getting away with Drake May getting sacked a lot and putting the ball on the mat against really good defenses, and someone finally made them pay in a way that they weren't going to be able to come back from, because the Seahawks defense is the best. This was the NFL's year defined by defense. The Seahawks were the best defense of that bunch. Even in this game, Sam Darnold, the first USC quarterback to start a Super Bowl game, which was a stat that blew my mind at the time, and now obviously adds winner to that. 50% completion percentage, did a good job getting out of a bunch of sacks, but almost threw the ball to the other team 3 different times in that game. So the defense, I'm sure at some point sat him down and was like, just don't lose it and we will get you a Super Bowl. And they did. So that was kind of the story of this year, and a fitting way for the Super Bowl to go down because of it.
It was a very college football-y Super Bowl in that we had an 8-play nobody team in the Patriots that everyone was saying going into the playoffs, the record smoke and mirrors. They haven't beaten any great team, whatever. And you can believe that or not. And then you also had the quarterback who won the Super Bowl not be your Patrick Mahomes or your Tom Brady. And this is not the first time this has happened in recent history in the Super Bowl, but it happens a lot in college football where the best quarterback doesn't win the national championship game. You've got a lot of Stetson Bennett's winning, Will Howard's winning national championship games. And that was kind of the Seahawks. They just dominated defensively and did enough on offense, had a good run game, and were able to win a Super Bowl because of it.
Can I say something? And I hate that this is where my brain went, because it's self-deprecating in a way that I don't believe. played in the 2012 national championship game. And I remember so vividly before that game, there was either someone made a graphic online or they actually turned it into a shirt. And it was that year Alabama and Georgia played in the SEC championship game, and it was a knockdown, drag out fight. I think it ended I think Aaron Murray might have been the quarterback at that point.
That tracks.
And the game ended. They threw like a 5-yard slant that fell short of the goal line, and the play ended on that. It was incredible. And the graphic was just the Alabama elephant and the Georgia bulldog were like 8 stories tall, and they were both squared up with each other. And it just said, "We'll get to you in a minute." And it was a leprechaun about this high. Like, whoever wins this game is going to be the national champion. And they proved it right. Like, I can't really say anything in retrospect, even though I firmly believe we deserve to get there when you look at what we did that season. But it was that same thing where coming off the NFC championship this year, I did think whoever won between the Rams and the Seahawks was going to win the Super Bowl. Like, those were, I think, the 2 best teams in the NFL. And the NFC championship game looked like proof of that. It was an incredible game, and it certainly felt like whoever came out of the AFC, maybe sans the Bills, if they had gotten past Denver, I wonder if Josh Allen could have drummed up enough magic, if maybe his foot hadn't been broken at the time, to maybe make that happen. But, ifs and nuts.
Yeah, it was
buts.
Aaron Murray versus AJ McCarron, a real duel. But anyways, we'll move on. We mentioned the Ice Chapel last week, and Mass was set at the Ice Chapel probably 8 hours after we finished recording. So we didn't get to talk about the Mass, but I do want to mention it, Mike, because they ran out of hosts for the Eucharist at this 10 p.m. Ice Chapel Mass on campus. And I've seen videos of it get, national news headlines. So we want to just shout out the architects of the Ice Chapel and all the students that went, because it was very cold. But the seniors who constructed it live in Coyle Hall, which is one of the new dorms, Wesley Buernaba and Martin Soros. And one of them is an architecture student. So
I was going to say there had to be an architecture guy in there somewhere when you look at the process. But you're right, Jess, this story broke contain. Like, when we talked about it, it was kind of like a fun, cute thing in Notre Dame circles. And then I'm looking and seeing it on like Good Morning America. They're showing this. And to be fair, I get it. It was an incredible scene of 2,500 plus people out on the quad at this. The most impressive thing to me was they did the like big crosses that they bring out at the beginning of the Mass. All made of ice with like candle holsters in them. The level of ingenuity was incredible. We would have just been drunk. They were doing this cool
for
stuff.
Sure. I mean, this ice crosses were very like Game of Thronesy. Like, I felt very like Night's Watch vibes. But yeah, the Observer article that I read said that the students spent over 50 hours building it out of water and ice in recycling bins. And then they used a car hood from Coyle's signature car smash fundraiser to form the arches with the bricks. So there's a lot that went into this, and it was very cool seeing the students and everyone saying the alma mater at the end. So pretty special.
So, Jess, I want to ask you something, because I do a show every day with my dad, who's a 1985 Notre Dame grad, and we were talking about this. And my dad immediately went to the place of, he was worried that eventually some drunk student was going to come by and deface the Ice Chapel at night. And I said, how dare you assume the worst in humanity? This is a sacred monument on campus. Mass has been said there now. It is a holy place. Mm-hmm. I firmly denied that. We got enough trees on campus you can throw bikes in, and enough dumb stuff that you can do downtown. You don't need to do that to the... Am I assuming too much good in humanity? Like, do you think the Ice Chapel's safe?
This is 100% a generational thing, because your dad isn't considering the fact that there's cameras everywhere, I'm sure.
Yes.
People have cell phones. They can, you can catch the person a lot easier than when your dad was on campus in the 80s. And there was riffraff and shenanigans happening all the time on campus. I've heard stories from my dad. One of my dad's, my dad lived in Flanner. One of his dorm mates, I guess, stole the ABC flag off the top of the stadium before a home game. I actually don't even know if whatever, but they flew it out of their dorm window in their dorm room and never got in trouble for it. And they used to do, I've heard so many stories. They used to do just insane things on campus all the time. But in the cell phone era, I imagine campus, you're probably on a little bit better behavior now in the public, outdoor spaces than in the 70s. that's just I think this is a generational thing.
I'm 100% with you. That was my first thought too, is there are too many eyes on you to then be branded as the one who defaced St. Olaf's
the chapel
in the middle of the
pisser.
quad.
You don't want to be and like, you're going to get expelled if you do that.
The
like
chapel pisser.
This is now like, this is a holy place, like you said. The only thing that can destroy this chapel is Mother Nature when it eventually thaws in like 6 months, probably. But you can't.
Sometime around April in the spring game.
Yeah, you're not getting. No one wants to get suspended over this. So I'm on Team Gojo on this one.
Okay, good. I'm glad we put that to rest. So shout out to the Ice Chapel architects and the phenomenon that became here. Jess, while we are doing shout outs of exemplary Notre Dame athletes and students, both current and former, you brought this to our attention here. The Winter Olympics, which as someone covering the Super Bowl, I had kind of had to remind myself, started on Friday, the opening ceremonies. There were some events going on and some tournament play before that. But we got a domer in the Olympics that we need to love up on right now.
Yes, I have been so locked into the Olympics, Mike, but we do have a former Notre Dame track and field athlete, Jadin O'Brien, participating in the 2-person bobsled. I believe it will be on Saturday. This upcoming Saturday is when the bobsledding will start. So I don't think you've missed it yet if this is something you want to tune in for. But as far as I can tell, she's the only Notre Dame alum participating in the Olympics, and she's on a really good bobsledding team. So this is very cool for her. I know I always see people who are like, how do people even get into bobsledding? But there is like this track and field to some winter sports pipeline. You probably know more about that than I do, but
well, I used to train. EFT was a facility in Chicago. A lot of Notre Dame guys used to train out there because we had a lot of guys from there. And I worked out there the year after I got cut by the Steelers. And Asia Evans was working out there. She was an All-American track and field athlete at Illinois that ended up going and winning bronze in Sochi in the bobsled like that. Because especially when you're one of the pushers in the back, that kind of explosive power that tends to come from track and field athletes can translate really well. You basically just have to kind of learn the mechanics of that, but you're applying a lot of the same force to it. And so awesome opportunity for Jadin, who is an insanely decorated, like, do we have her stats pulled up here? She's
I had it pulled up, but
decorated.
Yes, she's like one of the most decorated Notre Dame track and field athletes. She won gold in the heptathlon in 2023 in the championships, the NACAC U23 championships. So yeah, congrats to her for making it to the Olympics. I will certainly be tuned in for that. Obviously in the Summer Olympics, there's a lot of Notre Dame, like between women's soccer and fencing, of course. There's more Notre Dame athletes in that. And the Winter Olympics a little bit smaller, but nice that there's at least, some Notre Dame connection that we can root for in this one.
Absolutely. We always love shouting out our Olympic domers. Like you said, we're a fencing school, so we're used to this stage, but Winter Olympics brings a little extra flair. So if we're talking about ice chapels, and we might as well get some loving up on the Winter Olympics there. So awesome stuff. Good luck to Jadin this weekend. We'll all be rooting her on. With that in mind, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the new coaches that Notre Dame officially welcomed as we maybe finally stop this hiring cycle for the Irish. Next on the Echoes. Welcome back to the Echoes. As always, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Jess, I want to apologize in advance for the way I ended our first block because I realize I have been the mush when it's come to this extended dance mix version of Notre Dame's offseason coaching staff turnover and hiring cycle. It seems like every time I want to put a bow on things, someone else leaves for a new job, and we know Lauren Landau, Notre Dame strength and conditioning coach, some connection to the Kubiaks via the Denver Broncos. And Clint Kubiak did the ultimate I am Iron Man after the game last night where he wins the Super Bowl. It's like, by the way, I'm the Raiders coach now.
He did the opposite of the I'm not effing leaving. He was like, I'm effing leaving.
He's like, I am so leaving. So if Lauren Landau, which I don't think will happen. I mean, we're already in the offseason program here. I feel like it would be pretty wild for a strength coach in the middle of the most important part of his calendar year with the team that we've seen, like the Instagram content of them already training to do. But if on the off chance it happens, I am calling myself out, and I am not going to be the coaching jinx once again.
Okay, so John Bryce wrote on the 29th of January, sources told Football Scoop that 2 different NFL organizations, including the Ravens, have checked out Marty Biaggi and Lauren Landau. And it says Irish strength and conditioning coach Lauren Landau, previously atop the Broncos strength and performance system, could be a target with the Raiders or Cardinals should either or both hire Kubiak or Vance Joseph. So, yeah, way to go, Mike. But yeah, we don't know yet. And so instead of, pre-stressing out about that, let's talk about two coaches that were officially hired this past week. We already talked about Aaron Henry a little bit, but that was made official by the football team. They posted it on their Twitter account. That means it's official, Mike. He's officially hired co-defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach. And then we got a new linebackers coach, Brian Jean-Marie, who is the linebackers coach and run game coordinator previously of Michigan, but has had a lot of stops at a lot of different football programs. He's a very, very experienced coach. He's coached 2 stints at Michigan. He's coached at Tennessee, USF, Texas, Louisville, Georgia Tech, coached a lot of NFL talent linebackers during those years. The Notre Dame press release put out a bunch of stats about his the defenses that he's coached on, all of which have been pretty dang good. So doesn't seem to be a Chris Ash connection, which is interesting. Doesn't seem to be like a prior Marcus Freeman connection, although he was a grad assistant, I believe, on Lou Holtz's staff in South Carolina in 2001 and 2002. So there is a Notre Dame connection, just not maybe one that we were expecting.
Yeah, which I also think is kind of good, right? That it's not just like, oh, have you brushed shoulders with any of them? It's, hey, we're going to make sure, as always, we're evaluating and hiring great candidates wherever they come from. The Michigan situation, certainly unique, right? Everything that happens with Sharon Moore, getting someone, in coming in and Kyle Whittingham, who I'm sure had his staff, a lot of them coming from Utah, guys that he already knew. So you were going to have good coaches out on their ass that weren't necessarily like doing anything wrong other than being attached to a staff led by a coach who did, allegedly. So, so I think it's interesting, but I think it's a good sign, right? Like if you're Notre Dame, based on the level of talent you have, based on where you're at with your program, certainly relationships can help, but you should always be evaluating who's the best available candidate to us. And especially at a time where, hey, that hire without Washington comes on the NFL's timeline, which is a little bit off from colleges. So you're later in the game. This ends up working out pretty well with them in terms of availability. I checked with our guy, Jake Butt over at the Blueprint, got good reviews back from him from the Michigan side there. So, just doing our homework here, Big J journalism stuff.
Yeah, I love that cross-referencing and also cross-promoting, Mike. Well done. The Notre Dame release said in 2025, Michigan was ranked 19th among FBS programs in rushing defense and 4th in the Big Ten in third down conversion percentage. In 24, they were ranked 5th among all FBS programs in rushing defense and 10th in total defense. And while he was at Tennessee, also from 2021 to 2023, top 10 FBS ranking in tackles for loss in each of his 3 seasons as linebackers coach, top 10 nationally in defensive touchdowns, TFLs, team sacks, and 4th down conversion percentage. So it seems like a lot of good stuff from the defenses he's coached on. And yeah, to your point, it is interesting. We've got like a little mixed bag here of coaches. We've got the defensive back that Chris Ash coached. We've got Charlie Partridge, who was a former roommate of Chris Ash, who's considered one of the, better D-line coaches out there that Notre Dame could have hired. And then now you've got the linebackers coach that doesn't have like a direct connection, as far as we can tell, with either Ash or Marcus Freeman, but comes with a ton of experience in FBS coaching linebackers. So, I kind of rounding out the defensive staff here. But what do you think about the replacement so far for Mickens, Bulla, and Al Washington, just on a whole? Like, we think we're trending up. Do we think it's kind of going to be about the same, or do we think, it's hard to replace those 3, so maybe we expect them to be a little bit worse? Like, where are we at here?
I think you got to open yourself up to the possibility, because like we saw at the beginning of last year, at the very least, there could be some changes that take time to get hold. And that's why when we talked about in the last podcast, Notre Dame's schedule working out the way it did this year is going to be important for that, because the Chris Ash development took a little bit. Because of that, Notre Dame stubbed their toe in a couple of early games in a way that later on seemed like it would have been remedied based on where they become. So all the things I've talked about here before, and I don't want to reiterate too much, but like your position coaches, important communication, spring ball's huge for that, figuring out how you problem solve, figuring out the demeanor and the new techniques. Like, again, I had 4 offensive line coaches in 5 years. While a lot of things are universal about playing some of these positions, and I'm sure because of Marcus's hand in the through line of that defense and Chris Ash being the coordinator, there will be a bunch, but there's always going to be little technical things that each coach wants you to do differently, and each guy takes to that in a different way. So for Notre Dame's D-line, where hey, there was a bunch of turnover already. There are some guys coming back, important ones like we've talked about, but there's going to be a bunch of new guys in there that all learned something at prior schools, like Brew, like Tion Gray, that are going to be expected to play big roles, or young guys that weren't seeing the field who now have an opportunity to register with someone new. So I don't want to discount what that could mean for guys we didn't see that could get on the field now. But in veteran spots like the secondary, where we talked about Aaron Henry, coach the defensive backfield. I saw him shouting out Devin Witherspoon last night, who, played a very similar aggressive style of defense that we want to see Notre Dame's DBs continue to play. There's a lot of good stylistic matchup with where these coordinator positions lie, but it's going to be on now Marcus Freeman and Chris Ash to be that through line in the way that all the position coaches were last year in a defense that returned all of them, but certainly replaced Ash. And then there's the recruiting part. I saw some of those lists that they put out that, had Mike Mickens and Al Washington both listed as two of the best recruiters in college football. And so the good news is we didn't lose them to another college football team where they would go and put that prowess to work for somebody who's a competitor of Notre Dame. And we also live in an era where the organizational structure and how you go about finding and acquiring and compensating guys is a bigger part of that. The relationships still clearly matter, and Notre Dame's a school that's a true testament to that. But I do think some of those things can kind of offset this until we figure out how those guys factor into the picture, just because I don't know much about how they are as, recruiters reputationally.
Yeah, it's really interesting because individually, it seems like on paper, how do you replace any of those guys? But I think on a whole, I feel pretty good, maybe neutral to slightly better about how things are going heading into next season. I think Charlie Partridge seems like he's already paying dividends with the players that he's gotten in the portal. Mike Mickens, I think, is just really, really hard to replace. So that's hard to say, Notre Dame's in a better spot because he's considered one of the best. And same with Al Washington, like you said, considered a top recruiter. But it seems like they've brought in just a good mix of experience, former players, just solid coaches all around. And so I'm still I feel pretty good about it, Mike. I would have said probably going into the offseason, if you lose those three position coaches, we're in a worse spot going into next year. But I don't feel that way because I think we're already seeing, really good stuff from the defensive staff in the portal and heading into spring ball.
Yeah, and it's going to be on the talented players to offset that, right? We have talented experience returning, especially at the second and third level, and a lot of it's new in the first level on the defensive line, but that's the area where Partridge came in maybe the most well-regarded of that bunch in a way that certainly makes me feel good about that, but it's very, very interesting and going to be huge for spring ball. There's going to be a ton of intrigue anyway around this team going into the spring because of how good they're supposed to be next year. This is certainly a big part of that.
I think if you told me before the offseason started, we'd lose Washington, Bulla, and Mickens, I'd probably feel not good going into 2026. But I really think the staff's done a good job where I at least feel sort of the same. I think the Charlie Partridge hires already paid dividends with the defensive line portal guys that they've gotten. Obviously, Mickens is really, really hard to replace in particular. But I like that they brought in a former defensive back who's coached a lot of really great DBs at his time in college. And then I like that at linebackers, you've got someone with a lot of experience coaching at teams like Michigan and Tennessee that are other programs that are, serious football programs, good schools. It just seems like this is a solid mix, Mike. So I don't really feel as down as I maybe thought I would going into the spring season with three new position coaches on defense.
Well, I feel even better after seeing some of the other news. So we've got combination news of recruiting, which, the February signing day has become just such a non-factor at this point.
Fun. It was so chaotic.
We're losing recipes. Damn it. We're losing recipes. But Notre Dame did get the good news. Teddy Gerard officially in and Irish. We got all the fun graphics from the team account and officially reclassified to 2026. So he'll be on campus this summer to round out the quarterback room that, again, we know is led by CJ Carr, but Teddy Gerard, highly sought after. There were some teams still trying to flip him towards the end of the cycle, it sounded like. And he sticks with Notre Dame and now comes in and will, be one of the guys vying for the backup spot, similarly to what CJ Carr was a couple of years ago, and hopefully can be on that same trajectory as Notre Dame tries to continue to stack guys out of high school and continue to develop in the way that Marcus Freeman has said they want to.
Yeah, huge to have him fully committed and also reclassified. So he'll be around. I don't know how much he'll play because he'll be basically a high school senior next season, but still awesome to have him coming to Notre Dame. But last news item, Mike, is some of these number changes we must discuss.
Come on.
Tion Gray is going to be wearing number 0. That's the 336-pound Oregon transfer D lineman. I know you love that. We've also got Francis Brew wearing single digit next year. Chris Burgess, number 6 next year. Brew, number 7. I mean, that's a lot of single digit big guys on the defensive line. So aside from that, I mean, what are your thoughts on some of these big number changes?
Well, Tion Gray, by the way, you're right. When the number 0 or the digit 0 first got okayed in college football, I said it should be a rule that only big guys over 300 pounds, like D linemen, should be allowed to wear it. So he is the archetype. He was what I dreamt of as a little boy beginning to cover this industry that would one day don 0 for Notre Dame. So awesome to see there. Quincy Porter will also share that on offense. Dallas Golden. Long-limbed guy wearing a single-digit 1 going from 14 and hacking off the 4. You got a ball if you're wearing 1 in the defensive backfield. So I certainly hope that's the case. But Jess, the biggest one, and I think you mentioned it, Christian Gray going back to 29. 29 2 years ago on the run to the CFP National Championship, goes to 6 last year, and now going back to 29. I'm wondering, and I'll wait to hear on this, maybe he felt like he played better 2 years ago and so wants to go back to the number, which if it is the case, we've already said Christian Gray might be the most defensive back to ever defensive back at Notre Dame in terms of sheer mentality and the way that he approaches the position as a guy who's going to go out there, get beat occasionally, but play with no fear, especially in a system that requires him to do a lot of man-to-man coverage. So while I don't think the number 29 is objectively swagged out compared to 6, I respect the hell out of the mentality that I am going to game theory went into this factor. And Jess, of course, last but not least, card-carrying Nepo baby on this podcast. Got to shout out my fellow sons of former NFL players. Jerome Bettis Jr. went the 8 route here. Jerome Bettis Sr. wore 6 at Notre Dame, so not doing it. But Devin Fitzgerald, son of the now member of the 2026 NFL Hall of Fame class, Larry Fitzgerald, wore his dad's number 11, as did Thomas Davis Jr., son of the former Carolina Panthers linebacker, wore his dad's 58. So pretty cool to see those guys go and embrace the legacy.
I love it. I love a Fitzgerald wearing 11, Mike. It's wonderful stuff. And yeah, Christian Gray is truly a one-of-a-kind college football player. We will remember Christian Gray for the rest of our lives. I am certain of that. Him switching back to 29 is awesome. I'm glad he's doing that. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we're back, we're going to finish with some college football playoff scheduling news. Mike, our last segment here on this week's edition of The Echoes. Like I said, subscribe to the podcast, follow us, do all the things. We love hearing from all the fans. And I have seen some suggestions for potential guests, and I like what I'm seeing. So send more of those our way. Hopefully we'll get to it this offseason. But a couple news items, I guess, not really news items, but the college football playoff schedule for next season, we're sticking with 12 teams. We know that, but the dates of the playoff games have been announced. And if you thought this year's playoff and last year's playoff were stretched out over too many weeks, well, I have some bad news for you. Next year, it's even worse. Next year, we've got long breaks between the quarterfinals and the semifinals and the championship game. And the national championship game will be played on January 25th. We've got semifinals played on January 14th and 15th. And then we've got the quarterfinals, which are still on New Year's. So yes, that's 2 weeks from New Year's until the semifinals. And then another 10 days until the championship game. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. It's all, I would imagine, out of fear of competing with the NFL on weekends. They're just continuing to hunt weeknight days where they don't have to go head to head, because for anyone unfamiliar, after a date in December, there's a actual law that does not permit the NFL to play on Saturdays until mid-December. And then after that, they don't give a damn. And the NFL is never really going to push back on real estate. We know that's a more is better league. So college football at some point is going to have to just make a decision, because while I saw, and someone lined it up, compared to the NFL playoffs, the college football playoff isn't that much longer, but 2-week breaks in between playoff rounds, it's fine before the Super Bowl, before the national championship, if you told me you wanted to drag that out over 2 weeks. But the 2 weeks between the quarterfinals and semifinals feels unnecessary and continues to bastardize a calendar that already sucks for college football.
Yeah, if Notre Dame gets a bye in this playoff format, their last game of the season will be the end of November. and then their next game wouldn't be until New Year's. And then if they win that game, their following game is the second week of January. So that's one game in like 50 days, which is crazy.
It feels like the old BCS. Like when we played the title game, you had like 40 something days between your last game and then, and it creates a difficulty for these staffs to try and continue to hit a moving target in terms of how much time is going to be between these games, how you adjust the practices, especially accounting for multiple games. Like we've got a couple of versions of this, but it sucks that again, in some way, shape or form, once again, we're dealing with the college football playoff, even though it's sticking with 12 teams, lacking any sort of continuity in how we go about constructing this sport and continuing to leak over into the new year in a way that hurts everyone in terms of player portal stuff, more coaching situations like Lane Kiffin that I'm sure will pop up as a result of this. It just sucks.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the thing that is hard when you're a fan of college football, but maybe one of your teams isn't playing in the championship game like this year, is that like you just kind of seem like everyone kind of checks out after New Year's. So it just, New Year's was always kind of like a day where college football would crescendo. You'd have all the New Year's 6 games, and then, you'd have like one game after that. And I don't mind that there's more than, one playoff game afterwards. It just feels like they should be played in a sort of way that makes sense. And now, we're getting so many extra days in between that I think it eventually maybe people will start checking out. At the same time, maybe not, because people still love college football. Maybe they're still going to watch the games anyways. But it does seem like those semifinal games in particular, like the ratings have been okay. They're not amazing. The championship game this year, the ratings were, awesome, and people loved it, and people loved tuning in for the Indiana story and all of that. So maybe it won't end up mattering depending on who's in it, but it just seems like those Thursday, Friday night semifinal games do kind of just feel so random. And why can't we play them closer to New Year's?
Yeah, well, Jess, you're right. New Year's used to feel like a special day, and sports, especially football, is about ritual. And so anytime you start to deviate from that, especially early on as you're trying to establish new ones, the growing pains are going to be tough in college football, certainly experiencing a lot of them right now. Speaking of growing pains in college football, Jess, we know player acquisition has been an interesting road to toe in the last few years. And our buddy Kevin Clark over at ESPN on his podcast, This Is Football, interviewed our sweet Jeremiah Love at Radio Row this week. And one of the questions he asked him was about him being tampered with last offseason. And Jeremiah, in the non-answer he's trying to give, being cheeky, basically acknowledged that, yes, he was tampered with last offseason, people trying to woo him, but made it very clear he was Notre Dame through and through. He was Marcus Freeman through and through. The loyalty displayed by the best player in college football last year, at least in my mind, maybe non-quarterback, you can say it's easy to win the Heisman, but our best player in college football. And one of the draft darlings already in Jeremiah Love was loyal to the soil in a way that will make him even more beloved now.
Yeah, I mean, this was, we kind of had heard like a lot of teams would have loved to have Jeremiah Love, and we knew Jadarian Price was on Notre Dame, so maybe one of them would want to transfer, but both came back and both have shown how much they really love Notre Dame and how much they already miss Notre Dame since the season ended. So this was very nice to hear. I think Jeremiah Love is, he's going to go down as one of the all-time greats. And I do say, like, not to make this like a too macro of a college football roster conversation, Mike, but like you do hear this from a lot more players than a lot of people give college football players credit for. Like everyone talks about like the Damon Williamses or the Carson Becks or the Darian Menses of the world that transfer and take the bag or whatever, just try to, chase success or chase the money or chase the wins. And like, obviously we don't have anything against that. That's
sure
that's how this all works. But I think there's more Jeremiah Loves than we give credit for in the sport. And even like Ty Simpson being another example of a player who said the same thing about his time at Alabama and wanting to go onto the NFL instead of transferring to Miami and getting paid, $8 million or whatever they were going to end up paying him in the portal this year, and saying like, I was a captain on that team and it was important to me and it meant something. And I didn't want to leave that team and what we built there to play for another team that I just don't have that special of a connection with just for the money. So in a world where you constantly hear people saying how disloyal these players are and how they only care about this and they only care about that, I do think there's more Jeremiah Loves and Ty Simpsons out there than we maybe want to think exist. And so it was nice to hear that, but also like none of us were surprised by it because we knew Jeremiah Love was kind of a special dude and loved Notre Dame from the minute he visited as a recruit.
Yeah, when you're dating a baddie, you expect this kind of stuff. We had a baddie in the backfield, and so, of course, people were going to come holler, but he always came back home to who he loved the most. By the way, shout out to Jeremiah Love, got asked about Marcus Freeman's potential in the NFL as well, and said, I think Marcus is going to start at Notre Dame, and I think he is going to finish at Notre Dame. So he seemed pretty sure that Freeman was going to stick around at Notre Dame. So let's all hope that Jeremiah Love continues to be right the way he is about everything, because he's incredible, and we love him when we miss him already here.
Yeah, Mike. I mean, look, it's going to be a long off season, but I'm so excited for this NFL draft combine season. I mean, we obviously got a little taste of it with the Senior Bowl last week and seeing Malachi Fields, but this is going to be a huge off season for Notre Dame football. And we haven't even talked about like the full roster that Notre Dame put out this week yet, and all the jillions of incoming players that are going to be on this team. And spring practice starting officially March 20th, and a little over a month here. So there's a lot to look forward to this spring, and we'll be here every week. We'll definitely do some NFL draft deep dives on some of the Notre Dame prospects. I always love doing that ahead of the draft in April. So stay tuned, stick with us, and go Irish.